These funds committed can increase funding for grants to Bermuda's.
Greetings and welcome to this most important conversation with the Information Commissioner of Bermuda, Gitanjali Gutierrez. I'm Jamel Hardtman. The budget has been delivered. It's currently being debated. Now what? This evening, we'll be taking a very close look by answering your questions and providing you with information on how to hold your government accountable as it relates to your dollars. But before we get into that, let's start, Commissioner, by just telling the audience a bit about yourself, your office, and what PATI or the PATI Act actually is.
Good evening, and thank you. So we'll start off by talking about the PATI Act to put everything in a bit of context. So the Public Access to Information Act, or the PATI Act, gives all Bermudians and residents the right to ask for records held by public authorities. And it's a really important accountability and engagement tool for the public. So if we're to break that down, a public authority is who you can ask to give you records. And these are all listed in the schedule to the PATI Act. They include obviously government departments, but it also includes quangos and statutory boards and committees and others. They're all listed in the schedule. So when you ask a public authority, you're asking for records. And people think, oh, a record is a memo or a formal document, but it's actually, it's information recorded in any form. So that could include emails, WhatsApp messages, memos, contracts, letters, recordings, phone calls, phone voice messages, maps, anything that you could find in an office or in a computer. And so that's, the PATI Act is gives you a right to ask a public authority for a record. Mm-hmm. And making a PATI request is very easy. It's kind of the 1, 2, 3. So 1, decide what you want to ask for. 2, figure out which of all these public authorities has those records that you're interested in. And the third step is just put your request in writing. So all of us who love to make comments on Facebook or comments on social media, if you can do that, you can write a PATI request.
Indeed. And thank you for explaining that, because I know leading up to this conversation, I did get quite a few people who basically were saying, I really hope that the commissioner lays out how the process works. And I know that you do spend a lot of time, your office does, explaining to people. And folks, you can just go to the website, www.ico.bm. There's various commercials that are running all the time that stay on the internet that you can see as well. But let's get into the budget a little, Commissioner. I want to acknowledge the government, and I think the government done a fantastic job of putting information out this year. As I've stated publicly recently, there's so much information. We only have ourselves to blame when we don't know it, right? But they've done a fantastic job. But what does it mean for the public, right? The information's out. How should they then engage this information as it relates to digging a bit deeper? When it comes to this year's budget, we see the headlines, we see the stories, and then what?
So you're right. We have more information about the budget and the figures than perhaps ever before. Even if you just look at the government's Facebook page, you'll see a series of videos explaining how the budget's developed. They have videos and infographics about how much money will be spent on certain projects or areas. And there's lots of press conferences right now explaining what services or deliverables we can expect from the different departments' budgets. And so in my role as the Information Commissioner and overseeing the PATI Act and really promoting and pushing for government to be more transparent, here, in this instance, the government has been, and they've put that information out. And so what's it mean? It's an invitation for the public. All of this information is really an invitation to the public to be an active part of what happens next. So right now the budget debate is going on. The politicians are politicking, and the budget will get passed. And then we have a budget. And it's an opportunity at that point for people, for the public to get proactively involved.
Well, you say that about the public getting proactively involved. When it comes to PATI, you explained what PATI was a few minutes ago. How can we best use our PATI rights when it comes to finding out how our public money is being spent?
So the information's out there, and if you are thinking about your PATI rights, you have a right to ask for records, you have a right to be informed. And I would say, look at what's important to you. When people are looking at the budget, you're looking at all that information, focus on what is important to you. Are you a parent at Francis Patton? Are you a new entrepreneur or a tradesman who wants to win one of those government contracts for some of the new infrastructure improvements? All of the information in the budget can be very overwhelming. So start with the services or projects that are important to you, and then start to move one step at a time to identify what money has been earmarked for the things that are important to you. You can ask yourself, is it going to buy things? Is that money going to be used to hire a consultant?
Mhm.
Is it going to be used to build something or introduce a new program or service? Or is it going to be used to make an existing service better or more efficient? Is it for training? Because there's a lot of new programs and reforms going on. So ask yourself, what can you expect to get for the spending for the thing that's important to you? And then with this budget, with all the information that we have, be proactive. We love to complain. We love to point fingers after the fact about what this or that government of the day has done. That is almost a national pastime. But now, with PATI rights in hand, people have an opportunity to ask, to get information and to take action, not just to complain, but to actually be involved with a solution or an improvement or a consultation. You can share your ideas. You can voice disagreement. You can also offer consultation and support. You can shine light into all of the corners around public spending.
Alrighty. Audience, if you have any questions, feel free. What would you like to know about using PATI to learn about the budget? Feel free to ask any questions. The commission is here for you. So again, any questions that you have regarding how you can utilize your PATI rights as it relates to the budget, feel free to ask away, and we'll get through as many questions or comments as possible. You mentioned education. So let's start with education. The number we've been hearing is $6 million, $6 million towards education reform in particular. I, like many, don't know what this means outside of paying a consultant or contractor. That's what it sounds like to me. How can PATI assist in better understanding how that $6 million is being spent?
Right. So I have my infographic printed out that the government prepared. And you're right. So in part of their investment in education, they flagged that there's going to be $6 million for education reform. And it's going to go towards reform projects at Francis Patton and 5 other schools. So the Ministry of Education budget will actually be debated on Friday. And I would expect that the minister will talk a lot about what that $6 million is for, but let's pretend for now that this is all the information we have. So the budget money involves the Ministry of Education. So in thinking about that 1, 2, 3 of making a PATI request, you start with what you want to know. And you've said it. What is the $6 million budget estimate for education reform going to be used for? And we ask ourselves, which public authority do we go ask? Who do we talk to? And with education, sometimes some part of the education work is with the Department of Education. This might be the department or the ministry. So what I do is look in the budget book, which is a printed copy of the budget. It's online. You can see that the Ministry of Education headquarters has a line in its budget for the Education Reform Unit. And that unit has a budget of $1.4 million. So it looks like the Ministry of Education headquarters is the public authority that I want to start with. So now we know what we're asking for and we know where to go. And then it's a matter of putting your request in writing. The the PATI Act also requires public authorities to gazette any contracts with a value of $50,000 or more. So you asked about consultant contracts. I went and looked to see if the Ministry of Education headquarters had gazetted any contracts for consultants. And actually, for the upcoming year, they have 4 contracts that are listed. And so you've put them up. And so what we know from, without having even to make a PATI request, what we know is that there are 4 consultancy contracts dealing with different aspects of education reform. So if people are looking on computers, they can see at the bottom. If you're on your phone, I'll tell you that there are 4 contracts listed. One is for school redesign, and that's the overseas consultant. There's one for a consultant that's working on physical plant and development. There's a 3rd consultant who's working on data and matrix project management, and a 4th consultant whose job is to work on communications and engagement. So now we have a good understanding, and you then put your request in writing. So I might go to the information officer at the Ministry of Education headquarters. He's the person who will respond to your PATI request. And you might be interested in all 4 aspects of those consultancy contracts, or maybe you just want the one that is focusing on school redesign. So you ask for a copy of the contract. And you could also ask for any record that explains what the $6 million for education reform will be spent on. You can see in the budget book that there's about a little over $4 million for the education reform unit. And then there's these consultancy contracts that are about $2.3 million. And so you might ask to see if your guess is right, that the $6 million is going to be used to cover that education reform unit and the consultancy contracts.
Wow. Sounds like a lot, but folks, this is how we're going to get the information that we are seeking, right? It's a process. There would be no need for the process if people were willingly given the information. So thank you for that explanation, and even breaking down those current contracts of what it's going toward as far as that. No.
Can I add though? I'm used to using the PATI Act. I'm used to working with the PATI Act and looking for that information. If I was a Nana who had a grandchild at Francis Patton and I had time to help out my child who was, part of the PTA leadership, and I wanted to get this information, I could go to the information officer at the Ministry of Education headquarters, and I could just say, I could ask, I want to learn more information about the $6 million. Is there something in particular I should ask for? And the ministry has a duty to assist everyone with making a PATI request. So it also can be that easy that you know what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. You call an information officer and they help you make the right request. And then you put your request in and wait for the responses in the process to start.
Got it. Thank you for that, Commissioner. Just moving along from education, there were also some mentions of money being budgeted for upgrades and infrastructure. This is an interesting one because people are always wondering about contracts. Like, how should the public go about receiving updates on the upgrades and infrastructure to ensure that they are not only within budget, but on time? Like, what are the terms, and when are the reports expected? What if things don't go as planned? What can be done in that situation?
Well, as you look through the budget and you see monies set aside for projects that might involve public contracts, this is an area where people can really be proactive. So instead of finding out about contracts that may have gone awry or be delayed, or contracts that people are upset about after the fact, this is an opportunity to monitor for public contracts that get put in Gazette notices, or you can ask for copies of the contracts related to any of the infrastructure upgrades. And when you get a copy of that contract, you can look to see exactly what you said. What are the terms? What are the deliverables? Maybe some of the deliverables might be kept confidential, but the details might be kept confidential, but the general deliverables will be provided. You can look at the dates if it's for a major project. You can see what the stages are, so you can watch to see if it's delivered on time. And you can see what the contract amendment might be and follow that along. If a deadline is missed, what's going to happen? And if you are, again, part of a PTA or a community group or an advocacy group, or you are part of that industry, you may be engaged with the department on these topics and be able to be a part of ensuring that the public value for those contracts is delivered.
Thank you, Commissioner. And again, audience, if you have any questions, please let us know. If you have any questions, comments, what would you like to know about using PATI to learn about the budget? And I got a yes or no question for the audience as well. Has anyone in the audience submitted a PATI request previously? Yes or no? Just answer us yes or no. Have you submitted a PATI request previously? Yes or no? Let us know. But again, if you have any thing you would like to know about using PATI to learn more about the budget, please send a question, comment. Commissioner, let's take a break, and when we come back, let's get into terminology, understanding the different terminology to use. All right, we'll take a break, come back. Don't go anywhere. Please make sure you share the link with your friends, your family, your colleagues, so that we can get engaging on this very important conversation. We'll be back after this.
So you've made your PATI request. Now what? You will either get the requested records or be denied access to them. If you disagree with the response that you received to your PATI request, the Information Commissioner's Office can review that response. The ICO is an independent public office that protects and enforces the rights under the PATI Act. PATI requesters have a legal right to an Information Commissioner's review, and it's free.
ICO's investigators will examine how a public authority handled your PATI request. If you did not get the records that you requested, we will look at the public authority's reasoning against the actual records to assess their response to your PATI request.
Based on the investigators' findings, the PATI Act, and guided by the principles of integrity, fairness, and independence, I will issue a decision on whether the PATI Act requires that the public should have access to those records.
The Information Commissioner's decisions are legally binding and published on ICO.bm. When you make a PATI request, rest assured that the ICO is there to uphold, protect, and enforce PATI Act rights. Visit ICO.bm to learn more.
Alrighty, welcome back to this most important conversation with the Information Commissioner for Bermuda, Gitanjali Gutierrez. I'm Jamel Hardtman. Again, the budget has been delivered. It's currently being debated. Now what? We're having that conversation with you right now, trying to help you utilize your PATI rights so that you have every answer you're looking for as to how your public tax-paying dollars are being spent. We did ask, before we went to break, we asked how many of you have submitted a PATI request. Answer us yes or no. Have you submitted a PATI request previously? Yes or no. Traveling Trotty says no. Maya Palacio says yes. Well, Burmy Girl 3 says no. Commissioner, before we move on into terminologies, what is the ratio? If you know offhand, if you don't, that's fine. But I think people think it is something that the media is supposed to do, right? What's the ratio of the media or, media companies, journalists submitting versus general public? Like, is there a big difference?
Well, one of the things that's interesting and important to say is that when you make a PATI request for the things that you want, the public authority has to keep your identity confidential. So you do have some protection there, which means that we don't really know when people are first making PATI requests, whether it's just a regular member of the public or a member of the media. But what my office has done as the oversight body or the sort of independent body looking over the PATI Act, after the first 5 years, we looked to see how many of the parties that had come before us were the media and the public in the first 5 years. And it was actually exactly 50-50, which is sometimes surprising because if you have heard about the PATI Act, you've probably seen headlines or things in the media, but that is often, those are the big PATI requests that get a lot of attention, or when someone makes a PATI request and they're not happy with the result or satisfied with it, they might ask for my office to do an independent review. and I issue a decision that's legally binding and might order records disclosed. And that is sometimes what gets put across the papers or on Facebook. What is not as visible are the everyday Bermudians and residents who are making PATI requests about things that just impact them, might just impact their school or their community. And they make a PATI request and they have a positive experience with the department or the public authority. They get the records they're looking for, or they get an explanation of why the records couldn't be given. And that happens far more often, I think, than people realize. It's a tool that's being used by everyday Bermudians all the time.
And I'm happy to hear that. I think that's encouraging, and hopefully it inspires others who would love to know some things to submit a PATI request. And before we finish the conversation, we'll definitely remind everyone how you can do that. But let's shift gears a bit in terms of terminology. Politicians, they politic, as stated. And sometimes we ask questions and we get the political answer, not the truth or the answer that we're looking for. Why is understanding terminology so important when it comes to the budget and submitting PATI requests? Meaning, how to know what to ask for to actually get the information that you're looking for. How do we go about doing that?
Well, I guess I want to say first, I just want to remind everyone that public authorities do have a duty to assist you. So do the best you can, ask for what you're looking for, explain what you're looking for as best you can. But if you don't get it perfect, it's okay, because the public authority has a duty to assist you with getting access to records that are really held on behalf of the public. But if you're interested and you want to learn more and you want to be more specific about what you're asking for, terminology can be important, especially around public spending. Sometimes there are different rules for the management of public money or public contracts, depending on whether you're talking about a vendor on a consultancy contract or whether you're talking about a regular vendor contract. There are different ways that the government will choose a contract or choose a vendor. I think probably a lot of people might be familiar with the idea of a sole source procurement or a sole source contract from all of the controversy around the airport contract and the airport deal. There was a lot of talk at that time about choosing a vendor without having it go out to a public bidding process, and that's called sole sourcing. So if I wanted to know more about a contract that was sole sourced, you would think about, you can go and look at the rules around sole sourcing contract, or you can ask the department, where's the memo that where you asked and got permission to sole source? Because usually more often contracts go out to the public to try and get value for money in more competitive bids. So different rules will apply to different contracts. And that's the kind of thing that you can talk to an information officer about to see what type of contract you're looking for and what the rules are around it.
I definitely want to come back to the contracts as well. And audience, again, if you have any questions, what would you like to know about using PATI to learn more about the budget? Please submit questions. Any comments, we'll do our best to ensure that we get to as many as possible before our time is up. Also, if you choose, can you please share the link with your friends, your family, your colleagues, WhatsApp? This is one of the most important conversations. Again, we have a lot of these conversations on social media. Right now, you have the Information Commissioner for Bermuda at your leisure, literally, to answer your questions. So feel free to share it and ask away. But I want to switch gears real quickly, and I want to come back to contracts. But Maya Palacio, my colleague, she recently reported on the amount that has been spent on consultants over the last decade or so by both governments, right? What can the public do to find out who is making what, but also understanding what the tangibles are with consultants? We're paying, we just saw on the screen, we just saw that the Ministry of Education, we saw 1.8, almost 1.9 million for Innovation Unit Australia, right? Things of that nature. What can we do? We know they're making that money, but what are the tangibles? Like, what do they have to deliver, and in what amount of time do they have to deliver it? What can we do via the PATI Act to get this information?
So if you see a consultant contract that you want to really follow along and make sure that there's accountability for the deliverables, you can ask for a copy of that contract. And you would go to the department that is working with that vendor. You send a written request to the information officer, and you ask for the consultancy contract. Now, do realize that if there's proprietary information in the contract or something that might be sensitive for national security, those kinds of things might be blacked out or redacted. But the general contract telling you what is the general delivery of service, what are the sort of different points in the project management that you want to pay attention to, deadlines and deliverables, and what is the amount. You can look to see how the contract payments are structured. Is payment not supposed to be made until certain deliverables are met? And if you want to follow that contract over the year or over a few years, you can keep track of whether things are being delivered on time without additional payments being made. You can ask a public authority for a copy of their quarterly expenditures without the use of a PATI request. That's something that under the PATI Act, you're just simply entitled to. And so if you know that there are quarterly payments to be made and there's certain deliverables attached to those quarterly payments, you can ask for copies of those updates or reports as it goes along. This is important because it allows the public to be involved and proactive throughout the year. So instead of waiting with a contract for the year to end and all of a sudden there's a concern about deliverables being done late, about contract extensions, about additional payments or no work being done, instead of allowing that to continue for 12 months, someone who is staying on top of what's happening can hold a public authority and that vendor to account for their deliverables and can raise concerns if something starts to happen early rather than waiting till the end of the year.
Interesting. Thank you for that. And we will get to, I see questions coming through. And again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to send them through. But I just want to piggyback on that and go back to the consultants because the contractors, sorry, like consultants, there have been many questions about government contracts. Sole sourcing, is the rule 50,000 and over has to be put out to tender? What is the rule as it relates to what must be put out to tender? And how do we go about learning about the process of contracts being granted?
Well, let's talk about contracts within the Government of Bermuda. There is a good governance office called the Office of Project Management and Procurement. And they are an office within government that is responsible for ensuring the good stewardship of public funds, of making sure that good guidelines are applied when departments are contracting. And they actually have a code of practice that is quite detailed and spells out the steps for different levels of contracts. So if a department is engaging in a contract for $10,000, there's certain steps that they need to follow. But if a department is going to enter into a high value, expensive contract, there are very clear steps that are spelled out in this code of practice. And that code of practice is available on the government website.
Got it. Thank you for that, Commissioner. I have a question, and we'll ask the question, and then we'll take a break, and we can come back and answer it. How's that?
Okay.
All right. So Traveling Trotty, she says, what steps can individuals take if they are not satisfied with the response to their information request? All right. So Traveling Trotty has a question. Again, audience, if you have any questions, you can feel free to send them through. We're going to take a quick break. Come back. The commissioner is going to answer that question and any other questions you have. We've got a long way to go, so stick with us.
If you are a Bermudian or resident, the Public Access to Information Act gives you the right to request access to public records held by public authorities. This is called making a Public Access to Information request, or a PATI request, and here's how you can do it. First, decide what records you want. Are you looking for emails, recordings, meeting minutes, or spending records? Next, decide which public authority has the records you want. A list of public authorities can be found on the Information Commissioner's Office's website at ico.bn. Then, Take action. Make your petty request in writing directly to that public authority by email or letter. Need help? Authorities have a duty to assist all petty requesters. It's the law. Finally, if you receive records under the Petty Act, understand them and use them. Be informed. Be included. Be involved. You have the right to know. To learn more, visit the Information Commissioner's Office's website at ico.bm or call 543-3700.
Welcome back, and thanks for joining us for this most important conversation with the Information Commissioner of Bermuda, Gitanjali Gutierrez. I'm Jamel Hardtman. Again, the budget has been delivered. It's currently being debated in the House. Now what? That's what we're discussing this evening. We're taking your questions and doing our best, or the commissioner's doing her best, sorry, to provide you with answers on how to hold your government accountable using the Petty Rights Act. And we're going to go back before we went to break. And again, audience, if you have any questions, you would like to know about using your Petty to learn more about the budget, feel free to ask any questions, have any comments, feel free to submit. But we did have a question before we went to break from Travel and Trotty, who asked, what steps can individuals take if they are not satisfied with the response to their information request?
Great question. So you've made a Patty request, 1, 2, 3. You decided what you wanted. You figured out which public authority had the records, and you put your request in writing. Got your response back from the public authority, and too much was redacted. It didn't pull up records that you thought they should have. What can you do? So the first thing that you can do is ask the head of that authority for an internal review. So that's where the public authority takes a second look and maybe gives you more records. And then you get an internal review decision from the head of that authority. You're now done with the process within the public authority. And that's really where my office comes in, the Information Commissioner's Office. We conduct an independent review of what happened. If you ask us, send us an email and say, I'm dissatisfied with what I got, I would like for the commissioner to review their decision, we will do that. It is free. All you have to do is send us an email. And then that begins a whole process in our office where we will get copies of the records that were withheld. We will look at the decision that the public authority gave you and decide whether or not the denial of the records or whatever your dissatisfaction was, whether the public authority's decision was justified. And what makes your right under the PATI Act a right is that I will issue a decision. If it's appropriate, I'll issue a decision and an order that those records should be disclosed. And then my office will step in as Information Commissioner and enforce that right on behalf of yourself and the public. So if you should have access to a record, then the order that I issue will give you access to that record, and my office will ensure that it's released unless the public authority takes the decision to judicial review. So it's a very strong right that the people in Bermuda hold, and it doesn't require you to hire a lawyer. You don't have to pay any fees. It's free, and it's a very critical good governance right.
All right. You made me feel like I had a lot of power just now, Commissioner.
You do, and I think what's so great about that question is someone's asking, what can I as an individual do? And what's amazing is that one person can make a PATI request for something around a contract, a consultancy, a set of emails of communications between officials who are executing contracts and negotiating. They can make a request for a set of records, one person, and it creates this whole process that may result in an order that this office will enforce to release records to the entire public. And there have been incredibly important releases that have gone out over the years that people may not even realize.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you for that question, Travel and Trotty and audience. If you have any other questions or comments, feel free to ask. The commissioner is here to answer any questions that you may have regarding petty rights and, of course, the budget, how to utilize your petty rights to get information about how your money is being spent. I want to transition into affordable housing. $10 million, I believe, has been budgeted for affordable housing. people want to know what does that mean? Because I can't answer that. I'm not sure what it means. Through the PATI Act, how can we learn where these dollars are going?
So the PATI Act gives you a right to make a PATI request. It also requires public authorities to publish something called an information statement. And these are documents, you can find them on the ICO website, and they explain to you what each public authority does, what the services are it provides, what kind of projects it oversees. So something like this, $10 million budgeted for affordable housing. You may not know which public authority got that money, what's it being used for. So you might start looking at public authorities that you think are involved in housing, the Bermuda Housing Corporation, BLDC, Public Works. And so you can start trying to read those and see who talks about affordable housing. Or you can look on the government website and watch the videos of the speeches and see which public authority is talking about affordable housing. And then you can make a request to the information officer at that authority and ask show me a record that will explain what the $10 million is for. And probably it would be a good idea to have a conversation with the information officer ahead of time and ask for their assistance on understanding what you might want to seek.
Yeah, because when I think of that $10 million, is it going to materials? Is it going to labor? Right.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of questions around that. And since we're on affordable housing, just recently the government, it was reported that the government has given another $25 million to the Bermudiana Hotel, which was originally built for affordable housing. Can we find out where this $25 million is going? Like, how do we find this out? Like, what's happening?
Absolutely. So when we talk about terminology, people are pretty familiar with government contracts that might go to a vendor, a construction company to build something, or a painting company to do some renovations. People know about consultants, which are individuals or companies that may be hired to work on projects or to help fill in a gap in the staffing. There's also things called guarantees, and there are grants that are given, and each of those are different ways of providing money or promises to cover expenses that the government may give. And these are, there's different rules attached to each of them. I think that the Bermudiana Hotel may be a guarantee, but I'm not positive on that. In other situations, you might see a grant being given. And one of the things about grants is that generally they're not given in one lump sum. There is, if you have $1 million grant, you might have a first installment of $250,000 and you have to deliver. And then you get your next installment. But if there's any delay or work unfinished at any point, then there may be a delay or a reduction in the amount of money that's been given. So different rules would apply. So with the $25 million for the Bermudiana Hotel, you'd probably want to ask first, how is that money being given? And then you know how you can keep track of whether the rules are being followed that are tied to that 25 million.
Indeed. Thank you for that, Commissioner. Another thing that has been talked about in the media relates to the Bermuda Tourism Authority. The funds being taken away from the BTA to support social programs. How can we go about understanding what these social programs are and the tangibles? Because people are like, okay, you're taking $3 million from here and you're going to give it to social programs. We need to know what these social programs are. How much of this money for these social programs is actually going to pay people or consultants versus actual, things that can help young people or people in general to do for themselves. How can we do that?
So some of the information that's been given out already talks about the investment in our community. So some of the governments on their Facebook page, the infographics or the videos will talk about investment in our community. So the word social programs that's not very specific. So you might want to listen to the budget debate speeches or listen to the press conferences afterwards and try and understand what social programs are being referred to, or you take your best guess. There's more investments being put into sports development in line with the national sports policy. There's going to be increased grants for cultural and entertainment events, increased funds for athletes. So if that's the kind of community investment that you're talking about, you can make requests for those topics. But that's social programs is a very broad, wide concept.
It is indeed, and I think that's the concern people have. Is like, what are social programs? What do you consider social programs? So hopefully, all those tuned in are listening to the budget, or actually debate, or reading about the budget debate, so that they are more informed. Folks, again, if you have any questions or comments regarding tonight's conversation, what would you like to know about using PATI to learn more about the budget? Please send them through. We would love to have more engagement to ensure that your questions are being answered. This is your money. We know the precarious state that our economy is in, and our money, the public funds, a lot of people are very, very concerned about them. So feel free to submit anything that you may have. The hospital came up. There's a $5 million grant for the Bermuda Hospital Board to assist infrastructure upgrades and so on. One of the questions that I think people have had, Commissioner, is the hospital is a quango. Is there a difference, or what is the difference, if there is, between submitting a PATI request for a government department and a government quango? Is there a difference, or can people go about it the same way?
There's no difference submitting a PATI request to a government department or any other type of public authority. They are all treated the same. So we talked about in the beginning what a public authority may be. And of course, it includes the government and government departments, but it also includes quangos, statutory boards, and committees, which do a lot of work that touch upon a lot of people's lives and businesses. There is a schedule at the end of the PATI Act that lists all the different types of public authorities, but the BHB is definitely a public authority.
All righty. Folks, if you have any more questions, comments, we're going to take another break. It's your final chance. No, your final chance. All right. So if you have any questions, you'd like to know anything, just let us know. What would you like to know about using PATI to learn about the budget? Again, your funds are being given to various government departments and quangos. If you have any questions, now is your time to submit it. Again, the Information Commissioner is busy. She has a lot of cases to read. She's made time for you right now to answer your questions live. Take advantage of it. We're going to take a quick break and come back. And if you've submitted any questions, we'll get to some of them after this break. Stick with us.
Since 2015, Bermudians and residents of Bermuda have had the right to request public records held by public authorities. Our new right is granted under the PATI Act. PATI stands for Public Access to Information. The PATI Act is a chance for everyone in Bermuda to know why and how decisions are being made on our behalf by public authorities. Some public authorities include the Cabinet Office, the Police, Corporation of Hamilton, Redco, and more. For a list of public authorities, go to www.ico.bm. So if you have questions about decisions made in healthcare, education, the environment, and more, just ask. Call or visit the department that may have the record you're looking for, and make a PATI request in writing. It's your right to know, so just ask.
All righty, welcome back to this most important conversation with the Information Commissioner of Bermuda, Gitanjali Gutierrez. I'm Jamel Hardtman. The budget has been delivered. It's currently being debated. Now what we are discussing right now, we're taking your questions, and we're providing you with information on how to hold your government accountable using the PATI Act. All right, so we got quite a few questions, and I'm glad because many of them were questions that I had. And let's start with Media Maya, which literally goes into the next question I had, which was about timing. Media Maya's asking, what happens if it's been more than the time allotted? And my question, Commissioner, just so the audience knows, was how important is timing, the timing of submitting a PATI request?
So I guess maybe that's two questions. So in terms of the timing of when you submit a PATI request, there's so much information out now about how public money is being spent that if you can submit a PATI request as the money is being spent or before the money is being spent, you can be part of holding that department or that public authority accountable for ensuring that the services are delivered, that the money is spent the way it's supposed to be spent. If you make a PATI request next year asking how the money was already spent, there's not a lot that can be done to take any corrective action during the year. So the timing of when you make your request can count. The question then from Maya may be, if you make a request and you don't hear back from a public authority within the 6 weeks, which is how long it should take to respond to a request, you can then ask the head of the authority to make a decision on the request. And if you don't get any response, you can come to our office and then we will order the public authority to respond to you. So you should not have a PATI request entirely ignored. It may take some time to get a response, but you are entitled to get a response from the public authority.
All righty, 6 weeks, right?
That's the magic number. So if you make a PATI request, you should get a response within 6 weeks. Sometimes if it's complicated or something's going on in terms of the workload of the public authority, they might take an extension for another 6 weeks. They might need to consult with a third party if you've asked for a contract involving a company. So it could be up to 12 weeks. You then, if you're dissatisfied, it's again 6 weeks. You have 6 weeks to ask the head of authority to take a second look. They have 6 weeks to get back to you, and then you have 6 weeks to come to the information commissioner.
All righty, Amari. 400 is asking, how can we streamline requests so that there's information that is granted automatically?
That's a great question, and really goes to the heart of the purpose of the PATI Act, which is to eliminate unnecessary secrecy and make more information available to the public as much as possible. So there are requirements under the PATI Act to make information available proactively. As we said earlier, any contract with a value, a contract for goods or services for a value of $50,000 or more automatically needs to be gazetted. And our office requires that to be reported on. So you see a lot of gazette notices around December, January, February. The public officers' salary ranges have to be published. Quarterly expenditures from any public authority are available to you if you just ask. You don't need to make a PATI request. So there's a set of information that is automatically put out there. What we have encouraged public authorities to do from my office is that if you get a lot of requests for your meeting minutes or certain documents, then maybe you should think about just proactively publishing them. We try and model that on the ICO website. We are a public authority, and so our office publishes our meeting minutes, our quarterly expenditures. We publish our credit card statements, our salary ranges. So we try and model what we would hope that other public authorities would do. That's a great question.
All right, and audience, again, if you have any further questions, please reach out. We'll do our best to get through as many questions as possible in the next few minutes. Media Maya, she's asking, do you know when government is going to start charging for people to send PATI requests? Now, for those who may not know, last year in the budget, they did have that in their budget statement. Did anything ever come out of that, Commissioner?
No. So that was initially a proposal that was put forth by the government. Our office took a strong position against that there should not be a fee attached to exercising the right to make a PATI request. The Act itself says that there shall be no fee for making a PATI request. I think the government is understandably concerned about some of the burden and time it takes to respond to PATI requests. And that is, when you're looking at making the process more efficient, I think that there's a lot of training available for information officers. Records management is improving, and having the conversation with a PATI requester to make sure that a public authority understands what you are looking for and can help you sort of focus a request so that they can respond to it is one way that we can avoid putting any kind of financial burden on people to ask for public records.
All righty. Amari 400's asking, what happens when departments don't post their gazetted notices in the legislated time frame?
So government or public authorities have to gazette their contracts on a regular basis. We ask annually for public authorities to provide us with reports on their PATI requests, their gazette notices, their information statements. If a public authority has not gazetted its contracts, we sometimes get complaints from the public about that. We will have someone call or email our office and say, I know that this department has had X, Y, and Z contracts, and I have not seen a gazette notice. When that happens, my office will send a letter. We will contact that public authority and ensure that they get their gazette notices into the gazette.
All righty, thank you for that, Commissioner. And here's a question, because I think you explained the process, right? We go through the process, we submit the PATI request, we get the information. Once we retrieve the information from a PATI request, what can we then do with that information?
So when information is disclosed under the PATI Act, it's disclosed to you and the world at large. So you can use it for the things that would benefit you, benefit your community, or benefit your business. If you are an entrepreneur or a business person and you want to try and bid for one of these government infrastructure contracts, you can ask for a copy of a successful bid package from a contract from last year, maybe for the same type of services, so that you can see what a successful bid looks like. And that will help you put in a more effective bid when it comes time for the procurement. You might not get all of the details of what a company, their commercial information, but you'll see the presentation and you'll see what it looks like. So you can use it to benefit your businesses or your community. If you're concerned about school reform, if you are concerned about a grant that's been given, you can take that information, you can mark your calendar for due dates, for deliverables. You can take it to your PTA, your social club, your advocacy group, and you can inform all of them and then engage in discussions with the department. We have seen groups take the information that they get through PATI requests and then schedule meetings with a minister. And they will go in and have a much more informed conversation than they would without the information. We've also seen people who get information about things that for them may reflect poor public spending, and they will make that public. They will put something on Facebook or go to another outlet and ensure that that's brought to the public's attention. So really, there are so many ways that you can use the information, and there are as many ways as there are reasons that people would want to have those records and have more information about public spending.
All righty. Amari 400's asking, do you think the PATI legislation has enough teeth? Public authorities tend to drag their feet knowing that the requester will lose interest.
I think that the PATI Act has enough teeth, but it does require a requester to be persistent. So if you make a request and you don't get a response, it does require you then to send a follow-up email and say, I would like it. I have not heard anything. I would like an internal review. And then if nothing happens, it does require you to send an email to my office and say, no one responded to my request. And when that happens, you have an independent body, the ICO, that will step in and enforce those rights. I've issued not quite 200 decisions since the PATI Act went into effect. A number of those have had orders, and to date, all of the orders to disclose records or to provide a response to a PATI request or to search for more records, every single one of those orders has been complied with by a public authority. And that's where the teeth come in, that it is enforceable and it doesn't cost you to enforce it, but you do have to take the step of exercising your right and not just sitting on them. You can't get discouraged.
All righty. I know the feeling of someone asking a question like that. It just, yeah, you feel like as it takes time and it feels longer, you lose interest and you move on. I will tell anyone, stick to the wicket as long as you can, and trust the process. Trust the process. Commissioner,
because the law is on your side. I should also say that you have to remember that when it comes to exercising your rights under the PATI Act, the law is on your side in getting a response. So it's in your hands, but you have to use it.
Commissioner, I have a question, one final question, but I want to take a break. But I'll ask the question now, and then we'll come back and you can answer this. But this question has come up from many people, and basically, it's to do with a lot of things that are going on, whether it's a big project like the GenCom at Fairmont Southampton, or the Morgan's Point, or even Bermudiana Hotel. The question that's been submitted is, can someone submit a request to find out who could be involved in companies that receive government concessions? Think about that. We'll take a quick final break, come back, and audience, this is your final chance. If you have any questions, submit them now, because we're going to come to our final part of the show after this quick break. Stick with us.
How's your business doing, mate?
Bruh, I have social insurance, payroll tax, truck license fees. Sometimes I just feel like a hamster in a wheel.
Tell me about it. I completely understand. That's why I made a public access to information request.
You made a PATI request? I didn't know you can do that. But what does PATI have to do with me?
Look, it's simple. What matters to you? What matters to your family? What matters to your business? If it impacts you, you have the right to ask about it.
Ask, huh?
Yeah, if you don't ask, you may never know, right?
I hear you. You know what? I have some questions about a policy that changed recently.
That's a good place to start. Make a PATI request.
Be informed, be included, be involved. To learn how you can make a PATI request, visit the Information Commissioner's Office's website at ico.bn.
All right, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in for this most important conversation with the Information Commissioner of Bermuda, Gitanjali Gutierrez. I'm Jamel Hardtman. Again, the budget was delivered by the Premier of Bermuda, David Burt. It is currently being debated in the House of Assembly. Now what? And that's what this conversation was about tonight, as we spoke on how you can utilize the PATI Act to pretty much hold your government accountable as it relates to your public dollars. Commissioner, before we went to break, I did ask a question. Can someone submit a request to find out who could be involved in companies that receive government contracts?
Well, there's a couple of ways to answer that question. One is, beneficial ownership, or the actual owners of companies, is something that's kept confidential. You can ask and find out what the company is, and you can look at the registrar of companies and see who the public owners are. But it might be that underlying that question is people in the public wanting to know who are involved in these deals. So who's around, who's surrounding the decision to enter into the contracts. And what we see are people making requests for emails and other types of communications around the topic. So someone may want to know, who was the official talking to? Who was the elected official talking to about such and such a project? And they might ask for emails between that elected official or that individual and the people involved in the project over a certain reasonable period of time. And that's where you can start to perhaps piece out relationships that may be influencing or be involved in some of the contracting or decisions that happen, some of the decisions making.
All right, Commissioner, just remind people, we discussed a lot tonight, just remind people in the most layman way how they can go about submitting a PATI request to retrieve the information that they'd like to know.
So submitting a PATI request is very easy. You think about, what do you want to know? What records do you want to get a hold of? And you think about what public authority might hold those records. And we have a list on the ICO website of all of those different public authorities with an information statement that tells you what they do. And once you figure that out, all you do is put it in writing to that public authority. You can get assistance from those public authorities in making your PATI request, or if you want assistance from the ICO, you can contact our office at 543-3700, info@ico.bm, or you can also come visit us at the Maxwell Roberts building on the 4th floor and get assistance with making a PATI request.
All right, Commissioner, thank you so much for that. And what would you like or hope for people to take from this conversation more than anything else?
I hope that when people hear and see about the numbers and the projects and the spending and the budget, that they feel motivated and excited to take a proactive role in monitoring public spending, following public contracts, and being part of good governance and the solution for the future of Bermuda, rather than waiting and only complaining about it next year, that they step up. They look at what's important to them and what is important to their family and their businesses and their communities, and take the step of being informed and involved.
All righty, Commissioner, thank you so much. Another great conversation. I am grateful that you and your office have taken the time to engage with the people of Bermuda about such an important topic. And as we wrap it up, I just want to say, to the audience out there, thank you so much for tuning in to this live and engaging conversation. For more information, please visit ico.bm or call 543-3700. But I want to say something to the commissioner. This is your last term.
It is.
Information Commissioner for Bermuda. And I just want to go off real quickly and you were the first Information Commissioner for Bermuda. And after 10 years, you will be moving on. What has been the biggest takeaway for you as an individual in this position for Bermuda and Bermudians?
For me, it's almost less, it's less what I'm taking away and more what I'm leaving behind. This office is incredibly strong, not because of me, but because of the officers who are incredibly talented and dedicated individuals with a real commitment to good governance. And I serve the people of Bermuda and public authorities, but they do as well. So I'm very happy to leave behind an institution that is a strong, good governance body in Bermuda, staffed with people who are committed to the future of this country.
Commissioner, I think I speak for many when I say thank you. And whatever you do after this, they'll be lucky to have you. And I know whoever comes along after you, you've put them in a great position to be successful and continue the work that Bermuda and Bermudians expect. So thank you. And to Sheena, who is very integral part of making sure we have these conversations. We appreciate you and everyone in your office, the information officers and the like. We definitely appreciate this office. It hasn't been in existence long, but it's so necessary. So thank you for the work you've done. Thank you for the path you've paved for Bermuda and Bermudians. And yeah, good luck. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, audience, thank you so much for tuning in. Until next year, we will do it again. We'll continue having these conversations. Submit those requests. Get the information you need to keep Bermuda honest. See you later.